Sword Art Online Last Recollection is the latest entry into the Sao series, which is based on the Underworld arc from the light novels and the anime, and is a follow-up to the previous game that came out about 3 years ago, which is Alicization Licorice. So in this review I'll be going over the story, the gameplay, the endgame stuff, and essentially giving my final thoughts on whether or not this should be a must buy or wait for a sale pretty much. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review and let's get right into it. So, the story of Sao Last Recollection puts us into the shoes of Kirito once again, where him and his companions are travelling to the Dark Territory to hold peace talks and stop a war from happening. Upon travelling, they see a woman and a girl on a flying dragon being targeted, and not long after, the woman is knocked off to the dragon and Kirito comes to save the day again. Another woman added to the harem now, pretty much. The new character's name is Dorothy, and she is a Dark Knight from the Underworld, although she don't really bear the characteristics of someone from the Dark Territory. This is explained later on in the story, which I really won't spoil for you, but you can kind of guess where it will go. Now, within the story you'll meet a lot of familiar faces, and when I mean a lot, it's like a lot, basically from like all previous games that have been released pretty much. So an example to give is like Hajimari, or I keep saying Hajimari, Reverie, which came out from the Trail series, which is it basically had the same thing where like the majority of the characters were playable. So in this game, a lot of them from previous games, so like Straya, Philia or Medina, which I know a lot of people don't really like for obvious reasons, they're all in the game. They're all playable as well, so you have a variety of characters to choose from to party up with. Obviously Kirito has to be in the party as well, so fortunately you have to leave one person short, but that's just the nature of these games. But yeah, there's a lot of them in the game, and you'll see them in some form in the story once in a while, but for the most part you'll just see like the main characters that you've seen from like the anime and light novels in the game itself when it comes to like cutscenes and stuff. So on one good note with the story, or basically like the epilogue when you finish the game and stuff, is that you get to see where each individual character is like doing in their life or in virtual life pretty much. So I think that was a nice touch that they added into the game. Now overall, the story of the game is okay for the most part, though I did facepalm and chuckle a few times during some scenes, which I think a fair amount of people will do when they're playing the game, or if they've already played, they'll probably know what scenes I'm really talking about. I think that is just honestly the nature of Sword Art Online at the moment. Like when you see these scenes, it's just like typical Sao at this point, you know, considering how long Sao has been in the game. The story itself was a decent length, and there was a slight bit of padding towards the end of the game where you had to go and explore like these 4 shrines pretty much before going to the final dungeon, and the final dungeon pretty much was similar to like the last game Licorice, but it wasn't as, I think they're more or less the same length, but you do have like one puzzle that you kind of need to do, so you might be stuck there here and there if you're not looking for answers online and everything. But apart from that, it's decent length. I didn't find it too tedious or anything. You can probably get the story done within 20 hours or so, give or take, especially if you're just like doing like minimal exploring and you're not playing on hard mode, because playing on hard mode in this game, essentially all the bosses and enemies have quite a bit of HP, and you're just going to be sitting there for like minutes upon minutes just using the same button over and over again, which I'll explain later on. But yeah, if you're playing on hard, I would say give or take maybe a few more extra hours, so probably like 25ish or so, which is when I more or less finished it. But thankfully it is not like Licorice where you had to do the whole school segment, which was probably like half of the game, and thank God, I think if I remember correctly, they actually patched it to like shorten it because a lot of people complained about it. So this one, you just go straight into it. So for the most part, I enjoyed what I played. Obviously I knew the story beforehand, so I wasn't expecting it to deviate from what we've seen already. I expected like a few additional scenes because of the new characters and stuff, but yeah, at the end of the day it still ends the same more or less. Now, the gameplay in Last Recollection is pretty much the same as Licorice, except for the fact that they've more or less made it easier with the addition of auto skills. You can basically customize which 3 skills you would want in these slots, which will just automatically activate when you're just pressing the attack button. So square on PlayStation, X on the Xbox controller, or PC, I'm not too sure still, probably like your left click more or less. Now of course you can also still use the skills manually as well, which gives you a bit more of that, you know, control that we've had in the previous game, and it allows you to do the whole skill connect stuff and everything as well. But honestly speaking, if you don't really care for like doing like the absolute min-max damage and all that stuff, pressing square for the most part, basically pressing the attack button, you're just gonna be fine. Yeah, a lot of bosses might take some time, but it's not the end of the world. You'll be fine. Even on hard mode, you can get away with it to some sort of degree. Obviously, some bosses can easily like overwhelm you and stuff if you're not really prepared, but I think if you're already playing on hard, you should kind of know what you're doing already and have some sort of idea on like how to mitigate some of the situations you're into. But yeah, for that part, I'll give minus points because I was kind of disappointed on how easy it is to essentially just do attacks in this game compared to the last one. Also, launching enemies in the game is super easy. So essentially what you do is you just break them. Once you break, you just press the attack button to launch them. You launch them, you can attack them for a bit most times, and then essentially you'll down them. Once they are down, that's when you can attack a bit more and use your finisher. So the finisher is a bit different compared to the last game. The last game you had to essentially activate your special gauge, but in this game that same gauge is mainly used for like your allies and stuff now. So essentially you can only use your finish shots when you've knocked down an opponent, which I guess is to be expected because in the last game you could literally spam it constantly and you will just shred through like the majority of bosses instantly, especially if you have like the right builds and stuff and all that. I'll explain that a bit more later on. Perfect dodging and guarding is also in the game, which is pretty much needed to build up your gauge, which is mainly used for your allies to initiate their attacks and stuff. These are easily doable. Most enemies you can easily perfect dodge or perfect guard. Like their moves are so slow that it'll be hard to even miss half of them most of the time. Now this all ties into my next point, which I think this is where the game's best feature is pretty much more or less, and that is the customization of your allies' tactics orders. So similar to previous games, your allies will have orders that they can execute on command, which you will do most times, or sometimes you could set it to like do it when a certain buff or something runs out. So in this game, essentially what you would want to do, especially with doing like high-end content and stuff, is have certain allies which are alliance allies. Pretty much they'll explain in the game. You have alliance, you have arms, and then you have the tank one as well, which I can't remember the name of, sorry. But essentially you would want that alliance teammates of yours to have customized orders where they can essentially buff the whole team, because what their special trait is that instead of the buff just going to them, it will go to every party member that's there. So make sure, obviously you don't want to stack the same buffs and everything, so once you've unlocked a fair amount of them, you can like divide between like the 2 or 3 alliance members you have in a party maybe, and then essentially that allows you to just constantly have buffs upon buffs upon buffs, and even debuffs as well for the bosses as well. So that was probably like my favorite feature in the game, which I actually enjoyed messing about with because it does help with some of the bosses later on. Obviously when you're doing the higher tier content, that is going to be like your go-to stuff pretty much. Obviously they've kind of rebalanced it compared to the last game and everything, because the last game essentially you could have like there were certain abilities that would just make you shred through all the bosses easily. Though I think in one regard where I think they might have had an oversight was the SP management for it. So essentially when you're using these commands in battle, your SP is not depleted, which is quite a game changer honestly, because we all know once your SP depletes you just have to attack a bit more to get it back up and stuff. So to give an example of how this works essentially is that if you were to use the abilities or buffs right on the character itself in battle, then you would use them obviously, but you don't, if you don't have enough SP, you need to attack, along with basically waiting what, five minutes or so before the buff is available again to use. However, to countermeasure this more or less, if you have it on a command, you can use your gauge to basically execute that command, and they'll just use all the buffs in order of how you've put it in pretty much. And essentially it doesn't take no SP for whatever reason. I don't know if they forgot about it or something, but yeah, essentially it just makes all the fights a lot easier, which I don't know if they'll change or not, but we shall see. But honestly, that was probably like one of the favorite features of the game for me. Now, when it comes to weapons in the game, there are quite a fair amount of weapons to use. So the newest addition to the weapon type is the scythe, and it plays slightly different to what you would expect. It's more of like a basically you give, I give thing. So essentially you could lose HP, but you can also gain HP back as well, which was quite interesting to use for the most part. But I think for your average player, I think they'll still stick to like dual wielding, because that just seems super strong for whatever reason. Like in Licorice, we all know that was like the go-to thing when it came to like endgame content. But this game, luckily they've balanced it more or less so that other like weapon types can actually be interesting to play. Though some of them, I think they're still a bit wonky, but for the most part you can actually play around with like different classes and stuff and enjoy them for the most part. Now this kind of ties into my next point, which is the difficulty in the game. Honestly, the difficulty in the game is like nothing too special. I played the game on hard through start to finish. I didn't really struggle in any places. The only places that I might have struggled on were like the hunts, which is to be expected because they have like a significant amount of HP and they can actually do a fair amount of damage. But when it comes to like story content and all that, it wasn't too hard to do. Now, was it worth to play on hard for story? Honestly not. And I would recommend that if you're about to play the game already playing, I would say just drop it to normal or something, because you just don't really want to waste your time, because the drops on story are nothing really major. It's only when you're doing like the hunts and stuff where it would matter. So I would just say I would rather just save you the time of being on bosses for like an extra 5-10 minutes because they decided to add like what 5 million HP more to it because you're playing on hard or something like that. But yeah, overall the gameplay in Last Recollection, I would say, is done well for the most part, but again it is easier than the previous game. But I guess with one thing to say is that they did balance it quite a bit compared to the last game, so you know, you're not super overpowered, although I think probably like in the coming days you'll see a lot of builds where you can just shred through everything, or maybe they're already there as well. But yeah, I would say it's in the middle. You know, they've done some good, they've done some bad for the gameplay as well, but I think for the most part I enjoyed the gameplay, though I think it was just a bit too brain dead at some points. Now, when the game was announced, a part of me honestly hoped that they would up the graphics to be better than the last game, but then that was pretty much dashed away when I saw the gameplay for the game. Honestly, the graphics are the same as the previous entry, though one difference is that the engine that is on. So now it's on Unreal Engine 4, which is a lot more stable compared to whatever the hell they was using for the last game, because that last game, it just seemed to cause a lot of headaches, honestly, when it came to like the PC port. You know, people's GPUs were going stupidly high, even mine was at some point. Trying to stream it was a headache as well. Hell, there was even like FPS drops as well for some odd reason. Like sometimes it just did not want to run at all properly, which just kind of defeated me at some point. But with this game, honestly, it was good. You know, like the port itself, I could not fault it at all. Like there's a fair amount of graphical options to use. There's ultra wide support, which is like super rare when it comes to certain games. I did not expect it for this game as well. FPS has been stable across the whole game, honestly. Yeah, fair enough, I have a 3090, but honestly speaking, no one's really complained about the FPS. And there's been like no issue streaming the game as well on PC this time. So honestly, I am proud of them to say they've done a good job on the PC port for the most part. And I just hope that when their next games decide to come out, they would actually continue to use Unreal Engine 4 or even Unreal Engine 5 at that point maybe, but time will tell. But yeah, I would give points on that for doing a good PC port, honestly. But graphical, on the graphical side, yeah, just don't expect anything spectacular. It's literally just the same one as from the last game. I do hope if they are to do another Sao game, God knows when that would even come out at that point, I just hope that they can actually like push it to be something a bit more, because the devs themselves have shown that they can actually make a nice game. So if you have not noticed, they've actually got Cry Machina that's coming out soon, and that looks way better than Sao. So they've shown that they can do it. It's just if they want to do it, I kind of do hope that they actually do it for the next game. Now we've pretty much come to what everyone's kind of worrying about, is the end game in Last Recollection. And honestly, I would say the end game is super underwhelming compared to what we had in Licorice and even previous entries to the South franchise. The end game basically is allowing you to do all the hunts that you've seen throughout your exploring in the story, and you can just do them with like random people online, and along with the 4 shrines that you've done in the story as well, which is like stupidly high ranked as well. So I think the first one's like rank 75 or something, which, let's be honest, you're not even reaching that. I think the cap is like 50 as well. So it's, yeah, I don't know what they'll think of that one. Obviously I know it's just to push people and everything, but I kind of expected more on this, because if it's just me doing the hunts that I've been managing to do solo, then it's a thing of like, okay, yeah, it's good to do with friends and stuff if you've got it, just to make it go quicker. But then it's just like, yeah, do you really need to do it online then? No, not really, because why? You know, the last game, you had like different areas that you go into that were not like not in the main game itself, like completely different areas, different bosses and stuff, and that was actually fun. It was actually, you know, good to farm. You know, I actually found it fun for like a good couple of weeks, couple of months, honestly. Obviously it dwindled down a bit and everything, and then everyone kind of fell off to the most part, but yeah, it was actually fun to do then. This one is just like, nah, yeah, let me do the hunts that I've seen here, and then that's it, you know, pretty much. There's also a arena mode as well, so I don't know, most people might have not seen it, considering where it's not even hard to locate. It's just I don't think most people would even think to really go there. Maybe they will, maybe they're not. Honestly, me, I didn't even realize until like I already finished the game. I was like, oh, I've never really been here before. So how the arena works is that you can go up to, I think it's 20 rounds or so, 10 or 20 rounds, one of the two, I think it's 20. And you can select obviously the difficulty from like, I think master being the hardest and everything. Essentially you can get items from there as well, but I managed to get to rank 8 in the arena, well, to 8-5 pretty much. I died there, and the only thing that I got from it was a healing potion, and I was like, okay, fuck this is just not worth it then if I'm really getting a healing potion. I don't know what you'd get if you clear it, but if it's just something very minor, then I just think that arena thing really should have just been scrapped at that point, because it just adds no substance to the game whatsoever. It's just there for the sake of being there. But yeah, end game in this game is yeah, it's pretty boring at the moment, so don't expect a lot of people to be online. Like even me, I was trying to search for a match for like a good 10 minutes and nothing was coming up. Bearing in mind, yeah, the game has just kind of released, so yeah, some people might not be there and everything, but I expected it to be somewhat quicker. But yeah, if they don't really add more to it, then yeah, I can easily see this game just dying quickly, you know, to the point where it's just like you yourself can just go in there and solo it for your own reasons. But yeah, that part, yeah, that they really fumbled the end game, honestly. Now, with all that said and done, we've basically come to my final thoughts on whether or not you should buy the game or not. Overall, I still enjoyed myself playing Last Recollection, but for how much the game is and compared to the previous entries, I feel like this is like a slap in the face to the consumers. And the fact that the staple bed scenes and whatnot, basically the intimate scenes, are not in the game. Like, there are some things called episode quests where you can see them like doing certain activities and stuff together. You have like some nice pictures here and there of them. Yeah, there are no bed scenes, and apparently that's coming as DLC, or come with the DLC in December and April, which is honestly a shitty tactic, honestly, because they know a lot of people kind of want to play south for that as well. But yeah, that was just, I couldn't really believe that. Even I was kind of shocked by it. Honestly, they've done some good for the game, but they've also taken a few step backs in regards to the points that I've made earlier. So with that said, I'll probably say I can't really recommend the game at full price. I would say just wait for a sale and buy the game. But even by then, I don't know if when the game does actually go and sell, I don't know how many people are going to be playing it online. So that is, it's a give or take situation. If you don't really care about the online, then fine. Yeah, I'll just say wait for the sale and you're good to go pretty much. But yeah, hopefully when the first DLC comes out is good, because if it's not good, then yeah, you can just probably put the game in the bin pretty much. So yeah, with all that said and done, I'll give the game honestly a 6.5 out of 10. Even that I think is kind of generous to an extent, but let's be honest, they have done some good here. Like, the balancing was really needed, because if it was like the last game, then yeah, literally I'll just be thinking this is just a straight up DLC pretty much charged at full price. But yeah, wait for sale. And yeah, that is pretty much it for my thoughts on the game and my review on the game pretty much. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. If you got questions, leave a comment down below, or hit me up on Twitter, or X as it's called now. But yeah, this has been CG Inferno, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.